Yeah.
Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to talk all things Watchmen. It will be spoiler filled, so if you haven't read the book, then come back later and watch it later. Don't spoil yourself. So we can start with going on around the room and everybody introduce themselves. Jose, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. My name is Jose. I have a channel called Amazing Worlds, which is not very easy to find that way on YouTube. However, we discovered that if you type Wheel of Time sucks, you'll find me there. First result. So give it a check.
Yeah, my name is John. My channel name is Hey Y'all Listen Up, and should be able to find my channel name if you type that in, because it was one thing I actually checked before I titled my channel that. And there's like one video that's titled that, and that's it. So, or if you want to type something shorter, type Piers Anthony, you'll probably find me that way.
My name's Marissa Bailey, and my channel name is just Marissa Bailey, and I know that there's probably a bunch more channels with the same name, so yeah, I have not typed it in and checked.
It's always those little things you think of after you've already started. You're like, oh, I should have looked into that before I started doing this. And
Yes.
yeah, one of those things. So we are here today to talk Watchmen. And Jose, you want to show off your signed copy before we? I think it's worth showing off.
Yeah. It's actually personalized because it says for Jose there by Dave Gibbons, artist, and John Higgins. What am I doing? Who was the colorist for the whole series. So pretty sort of treasured in my collection.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd be touching that book. I just want it put away somewhere in the dark.
Tempted to buy a different copy for reading and keeping that for inheritance for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like I've bought this book countless times and I ended up with this version. And I forget the name of this edition. I think it's the deluxe edition. And on the back, I thought that the bookstore I went to sold me a used book because in the back there's like a handwritten note from somebody. You look into it and it's actually from Neil Gaiman, and it's just they put it in the back as like a gag. But I thought, oh, someone like had this book and return or like sold it, or I don't know. I thought I'm gonna go return this and get a new copy. But so I thought that was kind of funny. So we were talking a little bit before we went live about how this book, Marissa, it's your first time reading it, but for those of us who's read it a few times, it seems like it's a different experience every time. What stood out to you this time? Well, first, Marissa, let's start off with you. What were your impressions? What did you think about it?
So I had watched the movie before, and for some reason the movie just didn't really click for me because this is probably my husband loves the movie and he's seen it a million times, read the graphic novel, and he kept telling me you need to read the graphic novel and it'll be so much better. And yeah, I think a lot of things stuck out to me that I didn't notice in the movie, and I just feel like I was able to kind of connect with the characters a lot more, so that was really interesting.
It's a movie that I think if you don't know the comic book, it's like a strange experience to watch the movie. If to not have that context going into it, I think it's easy to get confused. So I think that's understandable. I think.
Yeah,
John,
I'm pretty sure I watched the movie first, but it's been I watched it shortly after it came out, so I watched it and then I bought the book and read it, and I think I remember following along fairly well with the movie. But I enjoyed the movie well enough to actually buy the book, and I think I actually enjoyed reading the graphic novel more the first time I read it than this time that I read it, because honestly, I didn't really enjoy the story all that much this time reading it, which is maybe I'm just in a weird place because I haven't enjoyed anything I've read all month. So, at least I finished it. So, and Steve's laughing because I was supposed to be on a live with him earlier for the second book in Expanse and got 200 pages in and was like, nope, I'm done.
Jose, what did you think about this one on this read?
Well, I think the first time I read it, I didn't fully understand what it was about. I think, like you mentioned before, if you go into the movie or the comic without having any background, seemingly it's a superhero story, but it's not really. Like these superheroes aren't really super. None of them have superpowers except for one, and it's all a bit weird. So there's some really good channels out there with some really good videos explaining uh, what Alan Moore was trying and I think managed to do with the comic. And then on second and third and fourth rereads, it's like everything clicks, everything makes perfect sense. Um, and there's so much detail on not just the story, but also the layout of the panels in the comic and different stuff. And Alan Moore is very renowned in the comic world for having super detailed scripts where the artist just gets pages and pages and pages of like a backstory or description of each single panel. And it completely flew me by, but I was stuck in my head when the Night Owl and the Silk Spectre go for dinner. And I didn't notice on the first couple of reads, but the chicken on the table has got 6 legs. And that's like, wow, okay, that's weird. And that was in the script originally and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
I didn't pick that up reading, but I read the IMDb notes about the movie, and they actually copied that in the movie. And so I was like, I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, it's just like all the tiny little details that Alan Moore just plants along the way. And then I didn't understand at all the whole Black Friday thing. Why do we have this comic within the comic? And then it all made sense later on.
I really like that they did that.
I think the book works on very many levels, but it needs a bit of context. At least for me, it did.
See if I can find that panel. But yeah, you mentioned the layout. I'm glad you mentioned that because I didn't even notice it until I watched some of those videos about the background and what, kind of Watchmen explained or whatever. And the layout for the panels is consistent from start to finish. I mean, there are some that they combine panels, but it's still that 9 on the page is still the same layout on all the different pages. That it doesn't stray from that format, which is crazy.
It's like a very classic 9 panel per page. But again, because we've got the full thing. But I think on the single issues, there was one of them where you've got like 2 of the panels combined into one, and that combination of 2 panels moves clockwise around every page. So that there's so many things going on with not just the story, but the art and layouts and everything, like I said before, that you pick on them on different rereads, or maybe someone points it out to you and then you go on and look for it.
I did not know that.
I feel like I really noticed that in Rorschach's mask, like how you could see like the 2 people hugging or whatever they were doing, and it's like the mural on the street too. I really liked all the different kind of hidden gems in there like that.
Well, yeah, lots of subtle touches in there. And just want to say hello to Matt on Books. Matt has a new channel, so go check it out. Matt from Berlin. So well, I guess Dr. Manhattan, his story, I think, is my favorite character arc of the story. Because he doesn't feel like he has control of his life when he's learning how to fix watches, and his dad convinces him to go into a different field, and he never feels like he fully has control. And when he does have his power, he's being used, and he doesn't feel like he has control over that. Even when he's a superhuman being, he doesn't feel like he has control over his life, and that's why I think he decides to just leave and go. I think at the end he says he's going to go start humanity somewhere else, like just kind of for fun. So what did everyone think about Dr. Manhattan and that whole storyline?
I thought it was kind of sad. Like, whenever he got locked into that thing and his girlfriend at the time just kind of walked away from him, and then he gets blasted, and then having to live life just knowing everything that's going to happen. And yeah, that was really sad to me, but it was also very interesting. And some of the things that he said kind of reminded me of this author, Fyodor Dostoevsky, kind of like how he felt, I don't know, felt like humanity just wasn't, I can't explain what I'm thinking, but you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the whole Dr. Manhattan thing is that kind of so super powered, super, superhuman, that he sees humanity as we see ants. Like, he doesn't care anymore because he just operates on a totally different level, and humanity is just meaningless to him. It's just a speck in the universe, and that sort of kind of makes sense because he's totally dehumanized. He's not using his powers to take advantage. He's got no material interest. He's just a completely detached entity. I think that's the intention there.
And him knowing how everything starts and finishes, there's no surprises for him. So, no, he knows everything, and that has, like you said, Marissa, I think that's a lonely experience to know how everything starts and ends. Matt says, back in the early 90s, a friend handed me all the individual issues at a party, and told me to read it immediately. I missed the party. It's understandable. Yeah. So what else stood out to all of you on this read?
I've always kind of tried, and I think I still don't understand the comedian. Like, why is he because he's not a comedian, obviously. So is it just, what is he the comedian because he thinks everything is a joke, or because he just looks at everything from a, as well, kind of detached, sarcastic, cynical point of view, and just thinks everything is a joke? Because he doesn't crack jokes throughout the, he doesn't act very comedian like. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
he's cynical. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. Is he's just got this cynical outlook on life, and everything's kind of funny to him.
Yeah, I think he kind of sees life and everything as like a big joke, and they just he has no sympathy, no empathy, just doesn't care. But I think some of the moments he has when he shoots the woman that's carrying his child back in, I think it was in Vietnam. That was a tough
So
scene.
in a way, he's kind of quite similar to Dr. Manhattan as well. They are both fairly detached from everything. They, like you said, they got no empathy for anything or anyone. Yeah, maybe.
And Derry said, Dr. Manhattan is an interesting discussion about the isolation of power, of being different and therefore feared. Yeah, he think the whole world is different, and him getting his powers really changes the course of everything, because now in 1980 New York, there's electric cars, there's different kinds of transportation, there's genetically enhanced food with chicken with 6 legs. So it really changes. And Nixon's on his 6th term or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 5th.
Oh yeah. So it really changes the course of humanity. Him becoming what he became. It was really sad story. His backstory.
Which is kind of why we get the whole Curse of the Black Friar comic in there, because I didn't understand it at the beginning at all. But apparently it was Alan Moore's thing to say, well, if actual superheroes existed and were a real thing, we wouldn't need superhero comics. like
Mm.
what would the comics of a society or a world like that be like? And that's where Black Friday comes in.
That's
And
interesting.
I kind of missed that from the movie, but I know they released it as a separate short animated story, but I haven't watched it. I think it's definitely out there.
In the, I think it's the Ultimate edition of Watchmen. It's like 3.5 hours long, but it does integrate the Black Freighter with the movie, so it does insert it in. But if you're gonna, that's I love that version. But if you're gonna watch it, then like clear your schedule for the day because it's
I
it
tried to
takes a while.
watch that one yesterday and I fell asleep like halfway through.
Yeah, it's a long watch.
Well, the standard one's only just under 3 hours, so the Black Freighter only adds like a half hour to it.
Yeah, yeah. Zack Snyder is infamous for his long movies. So Matt said, I always thought the point of seeing, I always thought the point was that he sees life as a joke with no meaning. Derry, I thought the comedian was another look at the ridiculous nature of humanity. I always thought Dr. M was Moore's answer to what would a real superhero be like, and the answer was not human.
I love
Yeah,
that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just say I love that when Dr. Manhattan, everyone is like calling him a god, and he says like he doesn't believe in God, and if he did, he wouldn't, be like him. And I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not just Doctor Manhattan, isn't it? Every one of the superheroes in the cast is there's something wrong with them, isn't it? Which is Alan Moore's thing again of whoa, how crazy in the head do you have to be to put on a costume and go out there fighting crime? And they all have the different, Rorschach is a total sociopath. Night Owl is probably the more normal one of them, but obviously, Silk Spectre's got daddy issues. Ozymandias is a total megalomaniac. So they all have sort of deep psychological traumas going on there. Because no sane person would put on a costume and go out fighting crime.
Yeah, I thought some of the artwork of the Rorschach has some Batman vibes to it, with kind of the similar poses and ways that Batman's been depicted in it. It's like you said, the person who goes out and fights crime in the middle of the night, punches criminals all night, is not going to be someone like Bruce Wayne. It's going to be someone like Rorschach, this insane, person who's on the edge of, he has this weird view of life, and this way that he this no compromise, this black and white, good and bad kind of viewpoint on life. So he's that's definitely the person that would be dressing up and punching criminals all night. Matt said, yeah, that kind of power can't help but give you perspective that's inhuman. Rorschach isn't a superhero, though. He's literally an insane vigilante. And I think, too, with Night Owl, like you said, he's probably the closest to being normal. But even when he goes back and he dusts off his costume, he says something like he's embarrassed of that he even has all this stuff. Like, it seems childish and goofy. So... Dory said, depending on the situation, Rorschach could be considered one of the worst villains.
I think Rorschach is Alan Moore's version of was it the Question or Mr. A? It was a 60s/70s superhero created by Steve Ditko, which was the original co-creator of Spider-Man. And then he went kind of underground comics, and he had this character, I think it was DA, which was very much black and white. Like, things are, you're either in the right or you are in the wrong. And he was going around fighting crime. And I think that's kind of Alan Moore's homage to Steve Ditko. And it was either DA or The Question, one of the two. Can't remember now.
I really...
I'm sorry, Marissa, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I really liked Rorschach's character more than I thought I would. Like, just learning more about his backstory, I really could understand why he was like that, you know? I thought it was a good thing, but
And I think even with Rorschach, with his childhood and the way that he, what he experienced as a child, and this aggression he has with sexuality, and because of his mom and her profession, he was even semi-functional until he had all these experiences fighting crime and interacting with these criminals, that he started to really, he just got worse and worse.
But I suspect that would be a fairly normal, understandable, logical development. Like if you spend your day or your nights, as the case may be, dealing with the worst of humanity, you will lose hope, right? It would be quite difficult to keep yourself sort of cheerful and happy. So it probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Did you find yourselves rooting for Rorschach?
a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more sympathetic characters in the story. So yeah, I mean, I kind of rooted for him, I guess more so than some of the others.
Marissa, did you root for Rorschach?
Yeah, just a little bit. I felt sympathy for him, and I was kind of, it's like I love that it ended with this kind of question on, like, should he have told humanity, but he did send his journal off, and was that the right thing to do, or not tell people? And I don't know, it's just, I think about it both ways, and I really don't know what the right answer would have been.
That is a great question. What does everyone think about that? Should he have sent the journal?
I would say yes.
Obviously, kind of like Ozymandias stands for the end justifies the means, isn't it? He's just seeking global peace. He's trying to unite humanity in the most perverse possible way. And Rorschach stands for the individual, isn't it? And that's why he wants to prevent and expose all of this. Because ultimately, I think Night Owl and the Silk Spectre, they make peace with the fact that the world is now united against a common threat, and they're sort of accepting of Ozymandias' plan. Rorschach was always, sort of defending the individual and that kind of dichotomy there. The problem is, I suspect that crappy magazine that he sends the journal to wouldn't take it seriously. So that's how I would, in my head, that's how the whole thing concludes.
Yeah, I love that it left us off on that last panel with not really knowing if what happens with this journal. Are they going to take it seriously? Is it going to make a difference?
Yeah, the movie is actually a little less ambiguous about it, because basically at the end of the movie, they're like, that newspaper's like, well, pieces broke out. What are we going to run now? And so they were like, well, go to the crank file and see if there's anything interesting in there. So, the movie kind of leaves it like, oh, well, who will will anybody believe it? Well, who knows? But it leaves it on a note that they're going to look at it because they have nothing else to print.
I really like that, Dr. Manhattan, I feel like he sees stuff on such a larger scale, and he's like, yeah, everything's going to be peaceful for right now, but it's not ever going to stay that way,
Yeah, how long will that last?
Well, how long would the relationship between Silk Spectre and Night Owl last?
Yeah. Well, how long does anything ever last?
Yeah, because I don't give them much hope either. I think that they just sort of fell together because of what they were, not because there was any kind of mutual personal appreciation. They understood each other because they were both costume vigilantes, not because there was any particular personal thing going on there. But I don't know whether that's enough to sustain a long-term relationship. I'm going to be cynic. I'm going to be like the comedian and say no. But...
Yeah, well, at the point in the story, that was the only person that she knew other than Dr. Manhattan. So,
yeah, you did get the feeling like she was staying with him because she had no other options, not because she was really cared. I got the impression they cared about each other, but it wasn't anything significant. It wasn't anything too significant.
Yeah, like he was kind of the default person to go to.
Yeah, I almost felt bad for him, in a way. But Matt says Rorschach's a fucking psycho. He's trying to at least trying to do the right thing, and he's not totally useless like Night Owl.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that Rorschach still believes kind of in the individual, even though he's seen so much of what individuals are capable of. That's an interesting kind of thought that he hasn't given up on people, individuals. Whereas Ozymandias he has this kind of he has given up on humanity. He's like, I have to do this in order for, I basically have to lie to humanity in order to move them forward.
Interesting. Darius said, I think sending the journal is something Rorschach almost has to do. He's an agent of the chaotic good. Dr. M is inhuman, Night Owl is impotent, and do good. The community doesn't care about good. Darius said, humanity is a naturally combative existence. Forces change, and change is difficult. Ozymandias forces that change. What did everyone think about his plan, how that all came together? I think one of the goofier parts of the book were when Night Owl and Rorschach are trying to find clues in his office, and he just guesses the password to all his big master plan. I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it seemed kind of a little bit out of place. So I thought it might be just intentional, kind of like poking fun at these kind of stories almost.
Not having the answer, but knowing Alan Moore, nothing is done without a reason. Nothing is, him writing himself into a corner and coming with a cheap way to solve that dead end. So yeah, quite possibly. Although, was anyone caught by surprise by the reveal at the end when they go to this polar base that Ozymandias has, and that he's the mastermind behind everything? For me, that was quite an unexpected turn of events.
Yeah, I felt like that was definitely unexpected. I was thinking it was going to be some sort of government thing that was set up, and they were actually trying to kill all the superheroes. And I was also not expecting him to be like, oh, yeah, I already pulled the trigger 35 minutes ago, so...
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been too long since the first time I've read it. So I don't remember how surprised I was. And I think by the time that I got kind of toward that part, and this time I was like, I kind of remembered that he was the master. I didn't go, I didn't start at remembering it, but by the time I got there, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this part now.
Yeah, when Ozzy does explain his plan to all of them, he's almost gloating about it, and he says, I did it, I've already done it, but you do get the feeling that these heroes are completely worthless. Like they're, they didn't do anything really. They didn't stop anything from happening, and I think that kind of puts it in perspective.
And that's another juxtaposition to the classic villain explaining his plan to the hero and giving him or her the time to. It's the opposite to a James Bond villain, isn't it? Where they are gloating about how they're going to conquer the world, and then James Bond pulls out his laser bomb watch or whatever it is, right? Like here, it doesn't matter. He doesn't care about telling them the plan because he's already done it. It's all in motion. And to answer Matt's question, did Ozzy do the right thing? Well, that depends, isn't it, on whether you think that the ends justify the means. Possibly, I don't know.
What would you say, Jose? What do you think?
No. I possibly don't need to start a nuclear World War III and release some kind of Cthulhu-like octopus monster in the world to save society. It's probably going a little bit too far.
I agree. Sorry.
No,
Go ahead, Marissa.
I was just gonna say I agree because thinking again how Dr. Manhattan was like, yeah, it's all fine for now, and no telling how long world peace was gonna last. And I'm just one of those people. I don't believe that a utopia could exist. So
And I'm going to agree here and say that he did the wrong thing, mostly because people have the right to determine their own life in as much as possible, and he took that right. He took that right away from people because he put it upon himself the responsibility of trying to work out. And here again, I mean, as sooner or later, people are going to figure out that he was responsible for what he did, and then he's going to, the repercussions of that would probably be much worse than what he was trying to prevent.
So you wonder if he wouldn't have done what he did, and nuclear war did start, how many people would have died? And having control or having a choice in what happens, and Ozzy took that choice away from everyone, is almost like a government taking choice away from the people too. Because if Nixon decided to hit the button and to nuke everybody, that's him taking that choice away too.
Well, here again, I mean, Ozymandias really couldn't have known that the Soviets were going to offer help. I mean, the U.S. could have very easily assumed that it was a Russian attack and hit the button and started World War III anyway.
Yeah, but that depends on whether you buy into the premise that he's the most intelligent man in the world.
Well, and here again, he says very clearly in the book that he is not. I mean, he himself denies that he's the smartest human being on the face of the earth.
But all evidence points to the contrary, isn't it? Because he even manages to fool Dr. Manhattan. Because he makes Dr. Manhattan believe that he's the cause of all these people that he's associated with in the past developing cancer, and he's figured out a way to block his powers and all that kind of stuff. So, the
But is that not just a plot hole in the story?
That's a question. I don't know. What do you think? Is it?
I actually think it's more of a plot hole in the story, and maybe I'm wrong. But
what do you think about that, Marissa? Was that something that was intentional, or was that just a plot hole?
I really don't know. You're saying like whether it was intentional that he was able to fool Dr. Manhattan? I think that I guess whatever he did to block like something, because it seemed like Dr. Manhattan just kind of was able to figure out exactly what he did as soon as he got there. So maybe Dr. Manhattan just had so many things going on with what he was doing at the government, and then all the stuff with Silk Spectre, that he wasn't. I really don't know, because he's supposed to kind of see everything. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you can also look at too that there's this nuclear war on the edge of someone going to push the button, and there's that, and there's this. Everyone has cancer, and he's just like hanging out on Mars by himself, just kind of reminiscing. So you wonder if he ignored this whole plot that Rorschach was investigating, that he just blew it off as that's just Rorschach being crazy. I'm not gonna, he didn't really pay attention to it, and meanwhile, he never suspected Ozymandias that he would, he never really suspected him. But again, you would think if he knows everything and he can see the future and the past and it all runs together for him, then shouldn't he have known at least or had a clue that something might be wrong at some point?
But he was blocking his, whatever you call it, sort of future seeing abilities by making him work on this project that whatever the project was, I don't know, for like infinite energy or whatever like that. Like, he really had it all figured out. So, yeah, it's a plausible explanation for everything that happens. I don't lean so much towards the plot hole side of things, but it's a valid point of view.
And that's the danger too of making these heroes too powerful. Then it's hard to, how do you ever get over on them if they have they're so powerful.
Well, and I guess that's another problem I have with the story is if Dr. Manhattan is this powerful, why are we still so close to nuclear war? Wouldn't he have solved the USSR problem?
Well, I think he had everyone. He had everybody kind of backing off because they knew that Manhattan was, America branded him as a weapon. So everyone kind of backed off. But once he disappeared, then it was like okay, now they're vulnerable. He's gone. Now we can, we can be aggressive.
But even before he left, I mean, wouldn't have Dr. Manhattan solved the Soviet Union problem? Because, here again, he's this all-powerful, he pretty much single-handedly won Vietnam for us. Mm-hmm. So, why not take that a logical step further and solve the Soviet Union problem for us?
Because like we discussed before, he doesn't care. Humanity is a colony of ants to him. He doesn't care what goes on, whether the black ants are fighting the red ants or whatever. He doesn't care.
Well, but here again, he still cares. He still cares enough to work for the U.S. on whatever project it is that he's working on. Yeah, he cared enough in the late 60s, early 70s to solve the Vietnam problem.
That's a very good point.
That's a good point.
That's a very good point.
Derry had a comment. I always thought Dr. Manhattan believed Oz's plan was necessary for humanity to reach the next stage of global interaction. And I think Dr. Manhattan does kind of, I don't want to say agree with Ozymandias at the end, but he just kind of, he's like, yeah, this is probably the best way to go.
And here again, maybe Manhattan is actually lying when he says that he couldn't see the future. Maybe he saw that Ozymandias was right and was, just not telling everything he knew.
I think that Dr. Manhattan, maybe it was because he was, even though he knew all these things, he was still kind of had the human flaws, because how something can become so sentient that it starts to kind of have these different flaws happen. So I wonder if he just kind of got caught up in certain human emotions.
I just bought your argument, John. Except for, but so as I was like, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, because also he ends up killing Rorschach, doesn't he? So he must have signed it up. But if he knew the future, he would have known as well that Rorschach would have sent his journal to the magazine. And yet he lets that happen. So I was convinced 99% until I thought about that. So then I don't know. Is that just Dr. Manhattan taking a step back and going, well,
Well,
let this
and
end?
here again, maybe he's planned it out to the nth degree where, Ozymandias is right, but Rorschach is right to, because here again, Rorschach sends his journal before, they leave for the Antarctic. So Rorschach does not have the complete story in, he has he's pretty close to the end story, but he's not actually all the way there when he sends it off. And here again, maybe Manhattan figured out that, what Ozymandias did was right as far as a short-term solution, but that, people did need to know that Ozymandias actually did it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe this was all planned and Manhattan knew from start to finish what was going to happen, and it was all, he just let things fall where they were supposed to.
Right. And here again, Manhattan watched the comedian kill his girlfriend in Vietnam, so he has been known to let events happen without interfering.
But
I think the comedian even tells him, "You let that happen. You
Right.
could have stopped me, and you didn't." Yeah.
But then, it's so contradictory. But then, you're right. But then, why did he get involved in the Vietnam War and not the Soviet Union problem?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess a lot of it comes down to, how much you believe in free will and how much versus determinism. And I think, especially with Ozymandias, and I think even more is coming down in the argument of determinism. Well, and with Manhattan, the way he knows how everything, he can see future and past simultaneously, that's a very deterministic argument.
Yeah, to Marissa mentioned this a minute ago, but he became so, he started losing his humanity. So during Vietnam, he had more of his humanity. He was still learning, and he was still, still had that part of him, and he just became less and less human, and got to the point where he was, he was above everything, or he thought he was. Darius said, in the macro scheme of things, a single generation of devastation could well be an acceptable loss.
Possibly, in the grand scheme of things, if you're talking about over thousands of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But back to Marissa's point. So Dr. Manhattan is losing his humanity, but when he realizes, or he believes that he's the one inducing cancer to all these people, he doesn't not care. He has an emotional reaction to it, and he does removed himself, at least temporarily. So he's not fully dehumanized, I suppose.
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Or did he only care because he had a personal relationship with them, and that's the only reason he cared?
Yeah, that was an interesting way to kind of get him to feel that way and leave thinking that he caused cancer, because that would make sense if he did give people cancer,
Darius said, I think on Dr. Manhattan's level, solving isn't the same as helping humanity find a way to actually deal with each other without war.
Yeah. And I think an important thing to remember is Moore wrote this in the mid-'80s before the Soviet Union failed. So, we still, at that time, lived under the threat of the Soviet Union, lobbing them over here.
Darius said, I think that's the point. Solving Vietnam hasn't changed the things that caused the war in the first place. Eric, hey Eric, for Manhattan, Vietnam War was also now. Oh,
we're getting meta now.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, it's mind blown now that I think about it.
Yeah. Ouch. I cannot address that point. don't know how to cope with that.
Because everything is now for him, right? The past, the future, everything runs together for him. Yeah, it's a great point.
Did you
No,
guys
yeah.
agree with that? Like, about how time is?
Well, for me, I go with the Terminator philosophy. There is no fate except that which we make. Because here again, that's another time travel story. Well, that's a time travel story with, multiple timelines. And also, if you look at Manhattan's way of looking at things, that does not account for randomness. And we do know scientifically that randomness does occur in the universe. So, here again, Manhattan he might have seen a possible future, but not necessarily the future.
I don't want to get involved in time travel. It's really time travel is really messy, and it's very hard to get right.
Yeah.
Because of all the paradoxes and everything that it involves. So you could probably fall down a massive rabbit hole here trying to unpick.
Oh, yeah. But, in essence, that's what Manhattan is a time travel story, because even, assuming if you accept that he exists in all moments of time simultaneously, then, it's not necessarily a time travel if it's a single deterministic, universe where, everything gets played out and there is no variation in the script. But then again, if it's a deterministic universe, Ozymandias wouldn't have had to do what he did. He didn't have to do it. He was, kind of fated to do it, which is a whole nother weird mess to think about.
Jose is speechless. Eric said, random thought, parallels between Ozzy and Manhattan, Toledo and Paul with the Golden Path.
Not familiar with that.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm sort of. Marissa, you familiar with that one?
Mm-mm.
John, you familiar with the Golden Path?
I am not.
Eric, you have to illuminate us.
Oh, it's Dune. It was an expensive interpretation that was only visible. It foretold the fluid events of the future, both great and small.
Yeah, I've not read Dune yet.
Me neither. I haven't seen the movie either.
It's a hold on. It's a TV series. The Golden Path it's also a TV series set in 1982, spanning 25 years. It tells the story of a family embroiled in conflicts of interests. I think that's probably not it. I think it's probably Dune. Oh, it's the Dune one. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Matt. Sorry, we have not read Dune.
Yeah. Well, here's my excuse. The movie came out when I was in sixth grade, and for some reason I got scared off from watching the movie. Now this is the old David Lynch, Kyle MacLachlan movie. For some reason I got scared off of that movie, and I just never really thought about ever coming around and picking it up again.
I quite fittingly read Dune on my trip to Egypt, but I read the first book, and I think I was okay with it. It didn't wow me, but I didn't hate it. But I wasn't aware that there were all the other books, and I've got zero intention of following the series. So.
Marissa, have you read Dune?
No. Yeah, I'm not huge into science fiction. I've only read a few, and I'm trying to dip my toe in that water, but I don't know. Dune just never sounds like it'd be something I would be interested in.
Yes, a bit like me. I'm okay with dragons and orcs and White Walkers, but I'm not okay with spaceships and lightsabers. I don't know.
Yeah,
it depends on.
Yeah, I walk both worlds, fairly. I think I like fantasy better, but I do enjoy science fiction too.
Yeah, just one that it's never appealed to me. It's never been something I've been really excited to read. Dr. Our friend Daniel, Dr. Puff and stuff. The probability trance. I think he's referring to Baker, if I'm not mistaken, to the Prince of Nothing. And yeah, not that golden bat. Yeah, it's the Dune one, not the television series. There's a lot of Dune and Prince of Nothing. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing.
So, have any of you picked up or read the prequels to Watchmen?
Mm-mm.
No.
No,
Blasphemy.
There is that. I picked up which one did I pick up? The Comedian, I think it was, because it was written by Brian Azzarello and drawn by Lee Bermejo, which I quite rate that pairing there. But yeah, I suppose it's one of those things where you're trying to milk that cow for however much it's worth, isn't it?
Yeah, from what I remember, I think they were kind of hit and miss. I never read any of them, but it seemed, I don't know, it didn't seem right.
It depends on who you got writing the story, isn't it?
Yeah. It's all depends on who the writer is.
Yeah, it's like those Dragonlance prequels. The ones that are written by different authors. Some of them are good and some of them aren't. So.
Yeah, the one thing that I was confused about is the squid at the end. That was a whole. It was a little goofy. I don't know. I did like the end of the movie. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. I did like the end of the movie better with the bomb going off, or like I like that better than the squid. The squid is a little. I mean, I got it, but it was a little.
The squid is one of those things that I block in my mind. Like I had to before joining the stream. I had to go to the back of the book to check that the squid was still there, that it was a real thing. Because you're right, it's so silly that or maybe the movie has made such an impression that I've blotted out the silliness of the squid. But
I blocked it out as well. I kind of read past that and was like, okay, and kept going.
Yeah, I actually think the squid's probably a little bit more of a believable ending because, the ending of the book says, hey, aliens are here. So that means that, we've got to work together. And so that's what the squid is, it's an alien that somehow teleported to our world and, suddenly died. So I took it for, it seems to me like you can get people to follow that thread a little bit easier because they see an alien.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is the way I kind of took it after I thought about it a little bit. I think with the squid, there's no question that it was something otherworldly. It was not a government thing. It was something that was just
Right.
that would bring people together more than a bomb that they could blame on another country or the Soviets put it there or whatever. There's like, who's going to put a squid in the middle of New York? So, in that way, I can kind of see why they chose that. And I didn't really see why they needed to. I think he takes the brain of someone and puts it in the squid. I forget exactly what. During the last, when Ozzy goes through his whole master plan, he talks about taking the brain out of someone's head and putting it in the squid.
It's the brain of the original author, Black Freighter, wasn't it?
Oh, okay.
So because it was like a world building thing, I think.
Yeah, they didn't really go much more in depth about why all of those people were on that cruise ship. Like, what was he keeping them there for?
I think those are people helping him, and he was just kind of cleaning his tracks or eliminating anyone who knew anything that was happening, so they wouldn't jeopardize his plan. And like he killed the people who were in his headquarters there at the end with the poison. So I think that's what it was. Is that John and Jose? Is that what you took it as to? That he was just killing all the witnesses or all the people involved?
That makes sense. I mean, that's what he does in the movie, just in a different way. So, and I don't remember. When the boat scene came up, I don't believe I knew that they were people that were working for him. I just took it as people who were, getting out to sea to avoid any fallout from, nuclear weapons falling.
That's kind of how I had taken it as well. Like, the rich people are off on the boat, safe.
Because the one was drawing the squid, right? She had an easel and she was drawing the squid on an easel. That's why I thought they were connected to him somehow.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, I just found the whole transition into the Antarctic base a little bit weird. I don't know. It seems like you spend most of the book in this urban setting and following these characters and the history and stuff like that, and then I don't want to say it's jarring because the whole story works very well, but all of a sudden you move to a brand new setting that kind of bothered me a little bit. Like we go from a sort of, it's a murder mystery, and then it devolves into this massive Holocaust-like alien. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
There's a bit of a bait and switch going on there. I don't know if anyone if you were okay with that transition or.
I thought I took it as more was kind of poking fun at the whole the supervillain trope of him having like a secret lair somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and that's kind of the way I took it. Is he was kind of, having a laugh about it a little bit, just like, because it was so jarring. It was a little goofy. What did you think about that, Marissa?
I definitely thought it was like a supervillain kind of layer type of situation, and to have, I just don't understand why he made it so like nice and green inside just to fill it with snow at the end too. It's like, oh, you're not gonna keep that how it is.
I mean, he had already killed his help there, and I don't know why he had to. Yeah, that was confusing too. And Daniel says, without more, I wouldn't even try the prequels. Matt says, Watchmen is a complete story. I love the comics, but prequels written decades later by other authors. And no alien threat was the worst part about the show.
Yeah, because the weird thing about Watchmen is, I think, because at the time and the way comic contracts worked, is that everything belongs to DC. I think Dave Gibbons was paid by the page, and Alan Moore wrote it, and he got paid whatever. And because it's never been out of print, the rights have never reverted back to Alan Moore. So I guess DC can do whatever it wants with it, and have that TV show and have the prequels. And didn't they have a weird crossover between Watchmen? They did a weird comic crossover.
Yeah,
what
they
was
had
that?
A few years ago. They had the I forget. It was an event. They had that they crossed over with. Yeah, there was a weird. I forget exactly what.
What was it? Was it with Batman and Superman and all the stuff, or was it something
because
else?
they were combining because they had the New 52. I think was that back in 2011 or so, and then they combined the two worlds again. They brought back continuity from before. So I think it was all a doctor because they started everything from scratch with the New 52 and 10 years ago, and then I guess they turned it into as a Dr. Manhattan thing. I don't know. That's why people don't read. People get lost in comics.
That's the problem with DC, is that every 5 years they reboot the whole universe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you all watch the TV show as well?
Yeah, I'm not saying it.
Yeah.
I tried, and I just didn't really get into that either.
I thought they did some all right things, but at the second half of the season just didn't do it for me. But I think there were some neat ideas. I just think we just didn't need it. Like, it wasn't like create something new.
Yeah.
take all that creative talent and create something new and fresh. And you know, it didn't. We don't. I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't really necessary. And yeah, Matt says, yeah, Moore hates everything Watchmen after his comic. Yeah, Moore hates a lot of things.
Moore hates everything that's not to do with what he's directly done. He hates every single adaptation of all his works. But I have to say, I suspect the reason he sold the rights to all the comics to make movies was to help the art. Well, I know he did it to help the artists. So because I met David Lloyd as well and Kevin O'Neill, so the artists for V for Vendetta and League of Gentlemen, and David Lloyd told me that Alan Moore sold the rights to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen to help Kevin O'Neill financially. So he didn't care about the movie. He doesn't rate it. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. But out of friendship, out of helping Kevin O'Neill, he sold the rights to the movie. And I suspect that's the same thing with Watchmen and with V for Vendetta.
Has anyone read? Because Jose, you mentioned about DC owning the rights to everything, and now after Image, all that kind of changed with creator-owned books. Has anybody read Alan Moore's newer books, like the Lovecraft series he had with Jason Burroughs? Have you guys read that?
I don't need pornography in my comics, so I tend to stay away from that sort of thing. I mean, and the thing is, fair play to him. Whenever he writes pornography, he will come out and say, "I've written pornography." He doesn't try to mask it. He doesn't try to call it art. He doesn't try to sell it, because he did that weird thing with Lost Girls with his wife, where he took Wendy from Peter Pan, and he took a few girls from sort of traditional children's tales and put them doing, sexy things in a comic, and he just called it pornography. And it's like, okay, I know where it is, and I can either take it or leave it. And I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, this is the only thing of Moore's that I've read, and it's largely because this book reinforced why I prefer standard novels over graphic novels. It's just, I like the storytelling better in it. Now, here again, I mean, the artwork in this is amazing. I will say that. And I think this story probably works best as a graphic novel. It's just not my preferred reading style.
And our friend Layla's here. I'm sorry, Marissa, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't really read too many graphic novels, but with Watchmen, it just, because I've never been one to be into superheroes. Like, I don't like Superman or Spider-Man or anything like that. But I loved Invincible and The Boys, and I really enjoyed Watchmen, and yeah, I loved the artwork in it. Like, I just thought everything about it was really, really good.
Invincible is really good. Did you read the whole series?
I have, and it's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's so good. Really, really good. Daniel says, and Amazon can do whatever they want with Tolkien's world, but without him or the Silmarillion, it's not looking good. I have started Jerusalem twice, but I stopped. It's so big and intimidating. Last time when we had the stream for Caliban's War, I think someone had mentioned it. I forget who it was, but I went out and checked on Amazon. It was on sale, so I got it for like $5. So I'll probably be reading it.
I've seen Jerusalem in bookstores, and yeah, it does look intimidating, and I'm not entirely sure. I don't quite understand what it is about, but it's some sort of saga history of his hometown or wherever it is. I don't even know why it's called Jerusalem. I don't know.
Yeah. So, what did everyone think about Watchmen? General thoughts and kind of what your takeaways were. What stood out to you the most? Because I think everyone has a different, the different storylines, different things stick out for different people. So, what stuck out for you? Don't all go at once.
Okay, no, I just I think for me, it's one of those graphic novels I go back to every so often, and I reread because it is not a superhero comic, and that's when I like my comics best. It's trying to do something and tell a story. And Alan Moore was trying to kill the superhero genre with this. He was trying to show people that superheroes must be mentally deranged people, and why would you follow them and deconstruct that whole thing. Um, I think it's just a great story that works exceptionally well from beginning to end, and it's one of Time Magazine's 100 best novels ever. So there's a reason for it.
Yeah, I'd have
Um,
to agree. Oh, go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Miss.
Oh, I was just gonna say I have to agree for sure. I think that, there were more anti-heroes than anything, and I really like that, picking apart the superhero because, in my opinion, I think if superheroes did exist, it would be something like Watchmen or like The Boys, and I think that it's just really interesting to think about. Yeah, I never liked Superman. Um, I don't think I think they would have to be really crazy to fight crime and do all that stuff. So
Yeah. As for me, I mean, before I read Watchmen, I just never had gotten into graphic novels, and I'd really kind of dismissed them as for kids because that was really the only kind of comics I'd ever been exposed to. And this kind of showed me what was possible with a graphic novel. And like I said earlier, I think I remember enjoying it more the first time I read it than I did this time. For me, this time, I had problems with the story itself. Like I said, the artwork's great. I kind of, I get why it's a graphic novel, but as I was going through the story, like things were kind of coming up that I was having problems with. And again, as I mentioned, maybe I'm just in a weird place where everything sucks. I don't know, but that's kind of my thoughts on it this time around.
I've definitely been there where it's like nothing nothing is sitting quite right.
John, you need another road trip.
And I think that's part of my problem is I went on this amazing road trip, and I was riding high, and then I came home, and it was like, okay, what's next? And I've not really kind of figured that out yet, because since I've been home, I've been in probably my worst reading slump because it was a week between finishing a book and then picking up Watchmen and reading it. Didn't read anything for a week, and only picked this up because I had this to come to. So
Maybe we need to invite you every week to have some chat.
We are doing V for Vendetta in a couple weeks, so
yeah, I haven't committed to that yet. I don't know. I did enjoy that movie. I've seen the movie and I enjoyed it. So, but I've not read the graphic novel yet.
I'd probably say that's the more faithful adaptation of all of Alan Moore's comics.
Are you talking V for Vendetta or
V for
Watchmen?
Vendetta. Yeah. No, V for Vendetta. Even though Alan Moore still despairs about it. But that was done before Watchmen. That was an earlier work. And it's a very different sort of thing.
I've not read that one or seen that movie yet, but I've heard very good things about both.
And speaking of the adaptation, rereading this one this time, and after seeing the movie a few times, I'm surprised how close this is because some of the scenes are right out of the book.
Yeah.
Well, apparently Zack Snyder was taking pages of the comic and using them for the storyboard, isn't it? Allegedly, that's what they were doing there. Yeah, I don't know. Alan Moore is a very peculiar kind of, he's a peculiar man. He's an anarchist. He believes in magic and all this kind of stuff. So it's a case maybe of separating the artist from the art because he's a bit weird that way.
You don't believe in magic?
I was going to say something, but ladies present. So
It's okay, say it. You're good.
no.
Well, it sounds like Moore has a problem of understanding that an adaptation cannot be an exact faithful retelling of the original work, and I'm okay with there being differences between the two, as long as it's well done.
No, I think he's aware of that, but he always talks about that the adaptations are not true or not faithful to the spirit of the story. And that's the bit I kind of wrap my head around, because I think the Watchmen movie is a pretty good, sort of adaptation. He's pretty faithful to what he was trying to do. Yeah, we don't have the giant squid, we don't have the black fighter, but all in all, I think it does 80% of the comic.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. I mean, this is, as far as I can, as I can judge, it's a fairly faithful retelling of the original story.
What do you think, Marissa? Is it pretty close, the movie to the book?
I think it is pretty close, I can definitely see, I think if I was an author, an artist, if I made anything, I probably wouldn't want a movie adaptation just because it can it's never the exact same, but like John said, as long as it's good, like how the show is completely different than the comics, but I think both of those are equally as good. So it just depends.
Yeah, I think it's hard to just for like a normal movie going person who's used to watching like the MCU movies and they walk into something like Watchmen and they're expecting a superhero movie, it's not going to be what they expect. This is totally different. So I think without knowing or without reading the book first or kind of having experience with lots of different types of stories like John, like you are, I think it's hard for people to get into that movie without having a little bit of background on it first.
Did you guys do movie first and then the comic?
I did movie first, I'm pretty sure.
I did movie first as well.
I did comic first. I read it back in, I don't know, years ago, and then I saw the movie.
Yeah. Because I went to see the movie because I had read the comic and I really wanted to see that. But I suppose I could see how people might struggle a little bit doing the reverse.
Yeah, I feel like I got way more context clues reading the comic and stuff because, there was a lot that I just didn't pick up in the movie.
And vice versa, I suppose. It's just, it helps to understand the story, to say in different mediums. But obviously, you watch the movie and then you go to the comics and you find all this extra stuff in there. I think maybe not.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much true of any movie that you see first and then read the book. You're always going to, because there's just so much you can put in a movie. There's a lot from a book you have to leave out. And even the adaptations of movies, the novelizations of movies that I've read, usually those books, contain more information than you get from the movie. So,
yeah, and don't get me wrong. I think in this case I'm kind of indifferent if which way I would have gone. Or maybe it depends on what you've done first. That sort of you favor, because The Godfather, I watched the movie so many times before I read the book, and when I read the book, there were whole sections there that I was so happy they cut out from the movie because I could have done without them. It expands on sort of not even secondary characters, but there are things there that why are we writing about this? some woman having reconstructive surgery on her nether regions. It's like, why is that? Why do we need to know this? I'm glad it's not in the movie. But I think that's not the case in Watchmen. I think the extra bits you get in the comic add to the story instead of detract from it.
Definitely agree. I think they were like Easter eggs, if anything.
And they did a really good job casting the Watchmen movie. I think all the characters are pretty close to the characters in the book.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, I think definitely the guy that played Rorschach was brilliant. I think I was quite stoked to see him in Preacher, but then I couldn't stomach the Preacher TV show adaptation. I think I gave up after 3 or 4 episodes. I really tried, but
It's such a shame what happened to that show.
is it did it get cancelled or?
It did, yeah. After season 3, I gave up, but it was after season 3 or 4 it got canceled. So they were trying to. That's a whole nother discussion. But they tried to give a whole lot of backstory that wasn't in the comic. So you had like the first season wasn't even. They didn't even touch a lot of the main storyline until the end of the first season, and then they got canceled 3 seasons in. So there's so much more story to. So I didn't bother. It was too depressing.
Because like I can understand those TV shows changing things so that the person that has read the comics doesn't know exactly what's going to happen. Like Walking Dead did that brilliantly, even introduced characters that are not in the comics, and I really enjoyed Walking Dead from beginning to end. I think it's similar to The Boys and a couple others, but yeah, the whole Preacher thing just felt very flat for me.
I have those comics, the Preacher comics, and I really want to get around to reading them. And I think we may have started the show because my husband, that's one of his favorite ones, but I didn't really get into the show, so.
Oh yeah, do
The book
yourself a
is-
favor.
Yeah.
Forget about
different.
yeah. The Preacher, yeah, Preacher is an old time. It is great, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know when you want to read that. I'd be down for a reread for that. Yeah. John, I think you may enjoy that one. Maybe we have to get you out of your slump, out of your hangover.
Yeah, I've never, like I said, I've not read a lot of graphic novels, and it's definitely one that I've not read.
The Boys too is great.
I feel like lots of gory,
Yeah.
weird
See,
stuff.
that's the problem. I don't. In fact, I'd forgotten how gory kind of Watchmen is, at least by my standards. So, and I generally avoid that.
Johnny,
Hey.
you've read Beyond Redemption. You're fine.
That book challenged me. You have no idea how much. I told somebody, I was reading Black Company at the time, and so I was like, okay, this is grimdark. I can handle grimdark, and so Black Company is like, splashing around in the shallow end of the pool, whereas Beyond Redemption is like getting dropped into the middle of the ocean, like during a hurricane.
Yeah.
No, I think comics are great, and I think it doesn't exist anymore. But anything that was released by the Vertigo label of DC is worth picking up. Anything, like any series you pick, is bound to be good. So yeah, Why the Last Man, Preacher, American
Hellblazer.
Vampire, the original Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. That was quite brilliant as well. Yeah, 100 Bullets.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff. Cool. Well, who's coming back for V for Vendetta in 2 weeks? Okay.
I might, but
Okay.
I have been so slacking on my TBR, and I'm trying to get ready for Negative Space.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you're excused this time then. You're an excuse.
I might. I haven't decided yet. Like I said, I did enjoy the movie, so it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to, read it and then rewatch the movie because I haven't seen it in probably 15 years now. The movie is that old, right?
Is it that old?
I think so. Yeah, it's
Bloody hell.
2000.
Yeah, it goes by in a hurry.
Oh my
The
God,
years.
What year is it?
It's 2022.
Okay. Let me see.
Oh, it's rubbish. Like a couple of weeks ago, like my oldest son is turned 7. It's like, wow, 7 already? Like, really?
Yeah. Well, my brother's oldest is 22 now. And it's like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 2005 movie.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. And the good part about graphic novels is the time investment, because I read through this in like 2 afternoons, whereas other books it takes me like a week. So
This definitely took me a week.
yeah. And Daniel says I will watch the V for Vendetta discussion. The Darkness That Comes Before and Negative Space is enough for now. Yeah, Daniel's doing the part by part of the Prince of Nothing series with us every week, so we're reading a part every week. So cool. So does anyone have a rating, or what are your final thoughts? What's your rating?
I have to say 10 out of 10. I loved it.
Yeah, I haven't given it a rating on Goodreads yet. I'm kind of bouncing between 3 and 4 stars. And really, for me, if I give it 4 stars, it will be for the artwork, not the story.
I never give anything ratings, but whatever your scale is, it's going to be pretty close to the top. I think, like I said before, first time I read it, I didn't quite understand it, but I had the feeling that I had read something big, something important. And I think on subsequent rereads and watching people explaining it and stuff, I do understand it, and I think it's exceptionally well crafted. And yeah, whatever scale you go with, somewhere up there, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's up there. I think it's one of those. I think everyone should read it eventually. I think everyone should give it a try.
I definitely think it's important enough that people should read it. If you're serious about reading.
And to contextualize, like, this came at a time where DC and the comics were a bit silly. It was like Batman was that campy 70s thing, and then Watchmen along. People put Frank Miller's Batman Year One Dark Knight Returns kind of on par with Watchmen in terms of making superhero comics darker in the 80s and 90s, but I rate Watchmen way higher than Dark Knight Returns. But yeah, it definitely had an impact on the whole industry and changed things. So, as such, it should be highly regarded.
Yeah, I think it asks important questions too, and kind of being able. I feel like everyone probably has a different answer on what they would have chosen to happen in the end.
Yeah, it's a great book to talk about after, because there's a lot of questions, a lot of fun topics to dissect. Like today, the time travel thing, I didn't even think about that. So a whole other perspective. So Marissa, if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you? Do you have any social media platforms you use, or just here on YouTube?
Yes, so I have an Instagram, and it's at Pages of Mars, and you can reach me there or on YouTube at Marissa Bailey.
Cool. John, you want to tell us about your socials and where people can find you and argue with you about your 3-star rating for Watchmen?
I'm Hey Y'all Listen Up on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. So you can find me I mostly hang out on YouTube, but I do have accounts on the other two. And here again, I will do a monthly wrap up. So, check that one out and see, watch me just rip on everything I read this month.
Good stuff. Keep it honest,
Yeah, keep it honest. Jose, what about you? Where's the best place to find you?
YouTube, so The Wheel of Time Sax, give it a search, and I'm there. And I've also got Instagram, although I don't understand how Instagram works with the whole reading book thing, but it's hosted.amazing.worlds, and I'm somewhere there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to come and chat about Watchmen, and hopefully John will convince you to get V for Vendetta and see how low you can score V for Vendetta. And of course, Marissa, you're welcome to join if you can fit it in your schedule. No, it's tough, but cool. Thanks to everyone who came by in the chat and all of you for coming by and gave me more to think about for Watchmen. Thanks, everybody.